we figured out that our DTX group has great adherence to the patients. Our digital therapeutics required 6 days of rehabilitation exercise, every day 20 to 30 minutes of exercise program. And patient adherence was 75% of that 8-week period. And our digital therapeutics also has a cognitive behavior therapy module in it, which gives 30 minutes of cognitive behavior therapy every week for 8 weeks.
Welcome to Digital Therapeutics edition of Digital Health Today, and I'm your host, Eugene Borhovich. I thoroughly enjoy bringing you discussions with incredible industry leaders in every episode, and it would mean a lot to me if you could rate the podcast in your favorite player and hit that bell to be notified of future episodes. In the previous episode, I spoke with Mark Woodka, CEO of DopaVision. In their own words, DopaVision is pioneering the development of innovative solutions that target the eye's innate dopamine pathway to address unmet needs in ophthalmology using digitally delivered light. Today, I spoke with Chan Yoon, founder of EverEx. In their own words, EverEx is revolutionizing musculoskeletal rehabilitation with their cutting-edge AI, pose estimation technology, and evidence-based treatments. But before we dive in, I met Chan just recently at HLTH in Las Vegas. Chan exemplified humbleness through his confidence. I was also very intrigued to interview him as we have not had anyone from APAC on this podcast, and I wanted to learn more about the region and, of course, EverEx. I hope you enjoy my conversation with Chan. Chan, welcome to the DTX podcast. Annyeonghaseyo. I hope I did not butcher that. I think, as we were catching up, one of my best friends growing up was in New Jersey, was Korean, and I always heard the mom say "Yovaseyo." That's really the only words that I learned, but that was over the phone, as you informed me. So good to have you on the podcast. I know we just met, and for our listeners and, the viewers that will be tuning in to some of the excerpts, Chan and I just met literally in the last couple of weeks. And Chan is one of the first companies on the DTX podcast from the broader APAC region. So again, welcome to the show. And I would love for you to introduce yourself, and don't forget about one small interesting fact about yourself as well.
Thank you, Eugene. So I'm very honored to be the first APAC member to introduce our DTX product in DTX Podcast. My name is Chan Yoon. I'm an orthopedic surgeon myself. I have founded our company, EverEx, in 2019. It's been 4 years now. The reason I started this company was actually I have never, ever thought about making a company my whole entire life. Because, the interesting thing about myself would be that I never have dreamed about entrepreneur. My father was a businessman. My family had like 4 physicians in our house. So our house was like academic house. And my father was the only businessman. And during the IMF period in Korea, he had really hard time with his company, bankrupt his company. We had gone through that kind of a tough period in my family. So doing a business, making a company was the last thing that I wanted to do. That's a fun fact of my journey. First, when I founded this company, I was thinking not about DTX at all. And I was like, because we had so much difficulty making our patients to adhere to the rehabilitation that need to be done to get better. That was like a problem that we could not solve for years. And it was common in every country. So the only thing that I was focusing was I need to do something, to make a little change, to make patients do exercise more, adhere to the rehabilitation more. So that was the only the focus that I wanted to address. And to do that, the simple idea that I had was making some kind of a smart brace for the post-operative patient to put on and do exercise. And, it kind of counts the exercise, and during the rehabilitation. That kind of functional, smart knee brace was the idea that I started with. And I didn't think it as a business.
It was a toy.
Yeah. A simple thing that I want to build, and maybe I'll just use it to my patients. maybe I can give it to some of my colleagues to, use it to their patient. And that kind of a simple idea was the start. And I tried it for a year.
Before we dive deeper into EverEx, because obviously that's really the focus on how you go to market, what's the product, but because you get to be the first guest from APAC, and we do have under Mission-Based Media, Digital Health Today, Tony Estrella, who is a friend of mine, runs a whole APAC podcast. So for those who are listening in, please tune in. Because you get to be the first one, I want our listeners to hear an interesting little fact from my perspective on our season 1, which was in January of 2021 that we kicked this off. Kind of halfway through the season, we noticed that one of the top 3 countries that people are listening from was all of a sudden spiked in South Korea. And so maybe as a benefit to our listeners, what happened kind of in 2021 that made people sort of listen to Digital Therapeutics Podcast? And maybe at a very high level, I know it's, over 40 countries in APAC, so you can't speak for them all, but maybe at a very high level and focused on Korea, give us a little bit of a view what's happening with DTX and broader digital health. And let's spend just a few minutes on that.
In 2020, August, Korean FDA have announced that they're going to do digital therapeutics. They're going to clear the digital therapeutics. They gave us the guideline to how to make a digital therapeutics. And that was 2020 August. I first realized there is a thing that's called digital therapeutics in January of 2021. That was a time people kind of get to know that there's digital therapeutics that we have to, look into. That's the mood in Korea at that time. And that's why I think at that period, South Koreans, who are interested in new, technology, new medicine, new digital health thing, they were kind of looking into digital therapeutics in other countries. And that's why I think your podcast got, spiked in South Korea at that time.
Awesome. As we talk about your own funding, we'll get to a little bit of what's happening, again, specifically in South Korea on kind of the broader digital health investment scene. But actually, before that, you started talking about that you kind of wanted to invent, for lack of a better term, toy. You combined 2 of your generations, combining the clinical background of your grandparents and others, plus the business acumen and the lessons learned from your dad. And you became an entrepreneur and a clinical entrepreneur. So tell us a bit more about EverEx and that journey to 2019. You kind of started with the hypothesis a little bit already, but bring us forward here. Tell us a little bit more.
So we started with that toy idea, and we figured out that it's impossible to make. It was very hard to make that toy. Yeah. I was like, wow, this is the era of making rockets and going to the moon, but we cannot make this toy. I was like, but it was very hard to make.
But I'm going to say everything is possible as long as you have time and money, right?
Yes. So it took over a year to make a working model of that toy. And that's the time I have realized that it's kind of impossible to sell. We cannot make it, mass production of that product at this, saleable price. And at that time, I first realized about the digital therapeutics, and one of the example of digital therapeutics was musculoskeletal. There was a report from IQVIA in 2021 that about commercialized digital therapeutics. And there were 2 companies in that digital therapeutics company list that are doing the musculoskeletal. That was Vivira in Germany and Kaya in Germany as well. Yeah. So looking into those companies and products, I have figured out that this may be the right way to approach to this rehabilitation problem, not this toy. And we figured out that we should pivot to that product.
You're an orthopedic surgeon yourself. That's your background. But your choice of MSK as the broader, how big of a problem is it in South Korea, right? I mean, we know in US and elsewhere, MSK is one of the top, concerns and spend, right? But how is it in South Korea as a market?
I would say same in South Korea, maybe worse because it's a very aging population in Korea. Yeah, the old population is getting a very high proportion. It's getting bigger. So, every degenerative musculoskeletal condition is very increasing because people are living longer and longer. Their chance of getting some kind of musculoskeletal condition disorders is getting higher and higher in Korea as well. And in terms of money spending as well, it's the one of the top area in terms of medical cost and spending as well. Almost similar to US.
Let's talk about funding, right? And again, to your point, only in August of 2020, the equivalent FDA in South Korea announced DTX. Digital health, has been around, I'm sure, in South Korea broadly, right? And technological tools surrounding patient access and empowerment have been there. What was your journey? And just for our listeners, EverEx has raised 2 billion, so not $2 billion, 2 billion, which roughly translates to 1.5 million. Sounds like that was a bit of a seed or pre-seed round, but talk us through a bit of your milestones and fundraising effort. You raised right before the pandemic kicked in, but also an undisclosed amount. So if you're willing to disclose here, great. If not, understood. Talk us through the funding round. Talk us through the challenges that you are seeing in the local market as the broader macroeconomic environment is really tough right now.
So that was our like a seed pre-A round, 1.5 million US dollar. And that was the time we just pivoted to digital therapeutics. So we were only having like a idea and what we're going to build and a team at the time. Yeah. And this year, end of April, we closed our Series A funding, 6 million US dollar. It was a tough time to do the funding, but I think our product as well as our vision and digital healthcare, this condition of the digital healthcare environment in Korea has supported those funding. Yeah.
Congratulations on that. As you mentioned, the market is tough everywhere. And maybe just one more question as, as again, the first guest, and let's just focus on South Korea. What does that funding environment look like in the healthcare space in South Korea? Is there a lot of investment still going in? Is the general, pause and wait is happening in South Korea? So give us a little bit on that. You get the privilege of representing your country on this as well.
Like other countries in this like last year, it has been a very tough situation. And only a very few companies got funding over the last year. And we are very thankful that we closed our funding at that time. I would say those who are not profitable at that point was not getting funding at all. The VCs that invested in our company have not funded for over like 6-8 months to new company at all. The lead investor of our Series A funding was large VC in Korea named Premier Partners. They have not invested for a year in biohealthcare sector at all. And we were the like a break point of the new funding.
Well, congratulations on that. And to your point, sounds like you're at least towards profitability, which we get into that a little bit later in some of the discussions of your products. But maybe just one other kind of quick thing on this. I also realized, I think in our catch up versus, what I've been able to find is that you're going for the DTX product that's in Korea, but you also have on the market a remote therapeutic monitoring product in US. Now, I just want to maybe touch on this for our listeners because, many startups outside of US, really look at US as a very congruent, large market, 300 plus million people. What made you decide to go to US? And maybe just a very simple question, how's it going? And what is the product actually? But before we get into the DTX stuff.
So our product in US is called EverEx Rehab. It has been registered as a software medical device, class 2 in FDA registry. So it's officially in the market. We have just started sales in US like since last month. And a few home health physical therapy centers are using our product. right now to get RTM reimbursement. The reason we started the EverEx Rehab was that because we already have built that product in Korea, and we have been in Korean setting, large hospitals in Korea has been using it for over a year before we decided to make a US version of that. Because we first thought that before we make digital therapeutics, that musculoskeletal disorder is a series of a lot of disorders. You cannot do like just one condition we're making solution for musculoskeletal disorders. Yeah. So to make a digital therapeutics, you have to pick one condition and make the clinical trial and solve the problem to focusing on one musculoskeletal condition. For example, like our first digital therapeutics is focusing on patellofemoral pain syndrome, which is a chronic knee pain syndrome. And that digital therapeutics is only targeting those one specific musculoskeletal condition, but a lot of whole musculoskeletal disorders need rehabilitation. Post-surgical condition, chronic condition, those all need rehabilitation in some way. So we first thought that this kind of platform that can address the whole musculoskeletal rehabilitation market would be needed in the clinical setting. So we built the platform first, and we made the digital therapies out of this platform to address certain conditions. And using the platform, we could have experienced how it can, merge into a hospital workflow before we even build our digital therapeutics. And that's the reason that we built that platform. And after we just built that platform, we heard the news that RTM has been been active in US since like end of 2021. And we figured out that would be a very profitable, good market to go for.
And hence we met just a couple of weeks ago, right? So that's probably your trip to get more customers in US. Kudos on the launch there. And then maybe just, before we get deeper into the whole DTX and PDT market in Korea and your own product, walk us through, I know you're still in clinical trials for the DTX, walk us through a little bit of that consumer or patient experience using your tools, using your product. So let's put the RTM product to the side for a second.
Our digital therapeutics, first therapeutics that targeting chronic knee pain condition, just finished our pilot clinical trial in Korea. 40 patients, 20 versus 20. Control group was physiotherapy group. We figured out that our DTX group has great adherence to the patients. Our digital therapeutics required 6 days of rehabilitation exercise, every day 20 to 30 minutes of exercise program. And patient adherence was 75% of that 8-week period. And our digital therapeutics also has a cognitive behavior therapy module in it, which gives 30 minutes of cognitive behavior therapy every week for 8 weeks with the worksheet of the 6 days, rest of days with the rehabilitation alone. And CBT session was 80% of our adherence during the 8-week period. So we figured out that this is great adherence, and patients really wanted this kind of solution.
So just from a user experience for our listeners to understand, obviously in the clinical trial, it's one way, but ultimately you would get a prescription, you download the platform, the physical therapist would quote unquote prescribe you the DTX, but also quote unquote a care plan through that product. And then the tool monitors how well you're doing it and gives feedback to the physical therapist. So I just want to kind of summarize it. Am I understanding that correctly? The process and the consumer patient flow?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Well, that sound means it's time for a question from our amazing partner on this podcast, Chandana Fitzgerald, who is the CEO of Health Excel, and as her friends call her, Dr. No Crack. Let's see what question Chandana has for our guest today.
Hey, Chan, what does the DTX reimbursement landscape look like in Korea?
Thanks for your question, Chandana. So reimbursement path is not yet fully determined in Korea right now. But the only DTX that has been mentioned from Korean FDA was prescription-based DTX in Korea. So we will go through the prescription-based DTX, but how the Korean FDA would reimburse those DTX is still a question. There's a saying that only 10% of the price would be covered by the government insurance, and rest of 90% would have to be like out of pocket from the patients. But it's not yet determined at all. They're still in the process.
Yeah, and I'm going to jump in here. So again, kudos for you guys raising your Series A. What I've been sort of hearing, at least from some of the German investors, where obviously there was a clear path to reimbursements, DIGA, it was, well, just because a company is in that DIGA and being reimbursed, we still want to see more traction. And what we're actually hearing from the German market is that there's quite a lot of blocking happening on some of these prescriptions. So we're all, I think, are pretty interested to keep up with what's happening in South Korea on this, how the reimbursements will take shape. And so hoping to bring, somebody from your team or other interesting companies from the market to hear more as things develop. Let's continue with the PDT route. And I think your business hypothesis, as the Korean FDA announced, let's call it acknowledgement of the digital therapies, that's starting to set up the path. Is your business hypothesis that ultimately you guys scale within South Korea in the DTX market? Is it the RTM product scaling, and that you mentioned already, profitable by itself or near profitable? How are you looking at the growth of the company and scaling the company? And one last piece to this, I think many Americans think about a U.S. company entering Europe broadly without realizing many times that, every country still has its own money flows, reimbursement systems. So EU is not EU as a whole. Therefore, I'm asking you, even on the APAC in the 40 plus countries, so are you looking outside of South Korea? So tell us a bit more on the scaling plans of the company.
We are thinking that the RTM market is a great market to scale. We have figured out that actually before we met at Health, I was at California PT Association conference to sales our product. And I've met a bunch of physical therapist groups there. The funny thing is the RTM was been active since 2021, I guess November, but 90% of the physical therapists still don't know about RTM yet. They have never heard about remote therapy monitoring at all. So they have been missing out their chance to have additional revenue from what they have been doing so far.
And hopefully better outcomes with that.
Yeah. So we're very excited because we were the one, telling them, there's a product that can help you with making more revenue and making your patient better. We think it's a great opportunity for us to scale at US market at this point. And in terms of DTX, I think it will take some time in Korea. 2 digital therapeutics just got cleared for the sales in Korea. 2 of them are both targeting insomnia. And those products have not actually got the reimbursement path yet. The government has not decided how to make the reimbursement yet. So it will take time. I think next 1 or 2 years would need it for Korean government to actually decide how they're going to do the reimbursement pathway for the digital therapeutics, I think. And we think that would be the timing that our product will be cleared for the sale. So we are looking into that timeline. And in terms of what you asked for the other countries for the DTX, we think Japan market is very interesting. They have cleared DTX targeting hypertension. The Cure App company called Cure App, they have been selling their product to the market, and I heard that they're doing quite well with that product. So we are thinking Japan market is very interesting market to look into in terms of DTX sales. But as you said, there are a lot of countries in APAC region, and every country has different medical system as well as different language. So it's very hard to actually penetrate those markets.
We're going to take a quick break and be right back with Chan Yoon, founder of EverEx. We started the discussion. I mean, you're an orthopedic surgeon. You're targeting physical therapists. In your clinical trial with your product, you're already seeing pretty high adherence to that product. How do you weigh the balance, and where do you see the humans? And what I mean by humans are the clinicians, health coaches, physical therapists surrounding your product. Do you see your DTX product as EverEx as a standalone at some point completely? I'm curious how you're seeing the human in the loop discussion and what you have in the market.
I think that's a very tough question. Yeah, because I think there needs to be some kind of human involvement to make this digital therapeutics better. That's like a necessary point, I think. But the guideline of Korean digital therapeutics does not mention about human involvement. So it only like supports standalone DTX at this point. But I think they are also considering how they're gonna manage with the human, involvement, how they're gonna, make the price for the humans, how they're gonna charge it, reimburse it. Those questions are still, a lot of questions that need to be solved before they even, decide they're gonna say they want some kind of human involvement in it. Yeah.
Yeah, Chan, I know it's tough, and I know, your own product. I think I saw somewhere it's using some of the AI to understand, how well people are doing the movements, similar to that. Maybe one more question before we start wrapping things up here. There's a lot of competition in US explicitly. I don't know the market outside of the US as well. But you mentioned some of the players like Kaya, right? I mean, we have Hinge Health, Sword in US. I know the model might be a bit different, especially with the last two that we managed. How do you look at yourself in that landscape of companies? And again, the bold move of entering the US market where there's such competition versus kind of sticking in your own garden, if you will, where the characters, all the positioning. Just curious how you look at some of those pseudo or direct competitors.
I would say US musculoskeletal market is so huge that there will not be just one winner. There will be multiple winners in that market. It's like a huge market. And competitors that you have just mentioned, those companies are more focusing on employer market at this point. And as I mentioned, RTM, still 90% of the physical therapists still haven't heard about that yet. So there are a lot of market opportunity there at this point. So I would say that's our chance to excel at that specific market. And I believe that RTM is in the long term, very useful market for the value-based care that every government is focusing on. For government to know that, this kind of a treatment is valuable, they have to see the data, real world data. And to collect those real world data, RTM is one of the tools to collect those data. So it will be a sustainable market in the future. So you want to be a first mover into that market and grab the winner.
Let's start wrapping up here. You started your story with the fact that you come from a history of clinicians. Your dad was an entrepreneur. And one of the questions that I always ask is, what advice would you give to? And I think typically, you're now made the cut into the entrepreneurship world as a clinician, but I actually would love for you to give the advice to the clinicians out there, and maybe more specifically, even in your own country, as the entrepreneurship is there, but rising. So just maybe combine a little bit of that, but the focus with the clinicians in mind.
As a clinician myself, most of clinicians don't like changes. I don't like change. Personally, I don't like change in my workflow. I don't like change in my, clinical setting. Those are a typical clinician mind, I think, because they have been working their ass off to get that point, and they don't want to, make a big change in their life. But what I want to say is that the world is changing. No matter you want it or not, the world is changing. The technology is changing. And the healthcare system is changing. So you have to be open-minded to catch up and, to be the, leading expert in those fields. So it's moving fast. It's very exciting that, to see that when I was in residency, I wanted to see those kind of changes, but, I thought it would be like impossible to change this system, but it is changing now. Now I see the change is coming. So it's been very exciting years recently.
Chan, we started with you and the interesting fact that we keep referring to throughout this podcast. We want to end this podcast with you. What gets you up in the morning outside of prepping for the US calls?
Well, my kids yelling
That
at me.
too, yep, that too.
Well, I open up my eyes with the excitement that I might change this current healthcare system. I might make a little difference that can actually benefit patients as well as clinicians. That's the kind of excitement that I'm having right now.
Yeah, and that excitement absolutely exudes. So what I want to say is Kamsahamnida. I think I pronounced that right, hopefully.
Oh, yeah, you're good.
Excellent. So thank you for joining in the evening to do this recording. Thank you for being here. I'm glad we met in Vegas. Thank to HLTH crew to putting brilliant people in with thousands of others in the room, and appreciate your time.
Thank you, Eugene. I'm a big fan of your podcast, so it's been my honor to participate in it.
Thank you. Spread it in, and let's make sure that this season we have South Korea as one of the top listeners as well. Have a great rest of the evening.
All right.
Thanks for tuning into the Digital Therapeutics edition of Digital Health Today, a production of Mission-Based Media. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast player so you're automatically notified each time I speak with one of these amazing leaders and trailblazers who are forging the path for digital therapeutics. If you'd like to learn more about Your Coach Health or Health Excel, you can find the links to this and more in the show notes for this episode. I'm Eugene Borohovich, and catch you next time.